Branding is very important to consider if you want to have a successful product. It's why many of us refer to facial tissue as Kleenex even if we are picking up a box of Puffs. This is true for many different products. However, not every product may have gotten it right the first time. In this video, we will have a look back at some popular brands that started out with some wacky names. Many of us grew up drinking Kool-Aid in the summertime. As a kid, there were few things better than a nice refreshing glass of your favorite flavor. The person responsible for inventing Kool-Aid was a man named Edwin Perkins. He grew up working in his family's general store and sold products like Jell-O. In 1922, Perkins experimented with developing a flavor additive for water, and this is when he came out with Kool-Aid. But that was not the original name. He called it Fruit Smack. At that time, it was a flavored liquid concentrate. When he started shipping it in glass bottles, it would break, which became a problem. In 1927, he came out with a powdered version, which he then started calling KoolAid. This product caught on quickly, and it soon was sold internationally. By 1934, the name was changed from Kool-Aid with an ADE to AID. Perkins' company was sold to General Foods in 1953, and the brand became a household name, which made him a wealthy man. When you think of the sexual revolution, the 1960s is the decade that comes to mind, and San Francisco was a hotspot. A San Francisco State University graduate student named Charlie Hall created the waterbed, which was a fluid-filled membrane that replaced the spring mattress. He came up with this new creation in a design class in 1968. He was not a hippie, but he did want to make a more comfortable bed. However, the name he chose for this new invention was the Pleasure Pit. As knockoffs came along, they came to be known as waterbeds. Eventually, the waterbed was super popular in the 1970s and 80s. One of the most popular breakfast cereals is none other than Cheerios. This breakfast staple was introduced in 1941 by Lester Borchardt after he developed a way to puff up oats into a familiar O shape. For the first 4 years that the product was out on the market, it was known as Cheerios in order to emphasize its whole grain origins. In 1945, General Mills shortened the name to Cheerios, and the rest is history. In 1859, a chemist named Robert Chesbrough became intrigued by oil drillers who were smearing a jelly-like residue all over their burned and irritated skin. He immediately went to work trying to develop a patented purification process in order to sell the petroleum goop commercially. Chesbrough traveled around and demonstrated the product's effectiveness by burning his skin with an open flame or acid and then soothing it with his concoction. However, the name Wonder Jelly held him back, and he changed it to Vaseline in 1872. The name is a combination of the German word for water, which is Wasser, and the Greek word for oil, which is oilin. There is no doubt that the greatest arcade game of all time is Pac-Man. This game created Pac-Man mania, and there were songs, shirts, cartoons, and various other products that were out on the market. Kids became so infatuated with this game that some cities and towns tried to ban it. But many people do not know that Pac-Man was not the original name. The game's creator was in Japan, and he named it PacMan. He may have chosen that name because of the character's puck shape, or it may have been a derivative of the Japanese word paku, which means chomp. Either way, the name did not stick when it came to America. Those that were trying to market the game were worried that teenagers in America might change the P in Puckman to an F. As we look back at it now, it was a wise choice switching it to Pac-Man. After seeing his wife create makeshift cotton swabs by wrapping cotton balls around toothpicks to use on their baby, Leo Gertenzang decided to mass-produce sterilized swabs. In 1923, he named the product Baby Gaze, which was probably because he thought that babies would be happier if they were not treated like pincushions from toothpick-wielding mothers. Later on, the name was changed to Q-tips, and that's how we know them today. The Big Mac has become the signature burger for McDonald's, and people all around the world know about it. This burger was invented in 1967 by a local franchisee in Pittsburgh named Jim Delagatti. He created a super tasty burger, but the early names for it were not that good. It was originally called the Aristocrat and the Blue Ribbon. The McDonald's brass was not impressed with these names, so they changed it to the Big Mac in 1968. It has remained a fixture on the menu ever since. Cotton candy has become a staple snack for carnivals and fairs everywhere. Surprisingly, this sugary sweet treat was created by a dentist named William Morrison. He teamed up with a confectioner named John C. Wharton to develop and patent an electronic machine that spun the fiber-textured candy in 1897. Together, the two men sold their confection at world fairs under the name Fairy Floss. Another dentist named Joseph Lascoul gave it the name cotton candy in the 1920s. When the Wham-O novelty toy company introduced the flying plastic disc in the 1950s, it was intended to be tossed and it was called the Pluto Platter. They gave it that name in order to capitalize on the nation's flying saucer hysteria. The name came from the inventor Frederick Morrison, who was also calling it the Whirly Way and the Flying Saucer. However, within a few months, Wham-O changed the name to Frisbee. That name may have come from the New England college students who tossed pie tins around from the Frisbee Baking Company in Bridgeport, Connecticut. But the Wham-O president, Richard Nurse, said that the name came from a comic strip named Mr. Frisbee. Morrison, who was the creator of this toy, thought that the Frisbee name was a terrible choice, but he continued to rake in the royalties. Alfred Butts was out of work during the Great Depression in 1933 when he used his free time to work on some letter tiles. He spent years trying to further develop these pieces in the 1930s and 1940s. Butts referred to his creation as Lexico, It, and Crisscross Words. It was not until Butts teamed up with an entrepreneur named James Bruneau that the two came up with the name Scrabble, which means to collect or hold on to something. They then trademarked the title in 1948. By the 1950s, the game became so popular that the two could no longer keep up with the demand, even though they were producing 6,000 sets a week. Frank, Anthony, and Sam Dorsa were an enterprising bunch of brothers. In 1932, they came up with a popular mayonnaise recipe which they dubbed Eggo Mayonnaise because of its egg-heavy content. The siblings then turned their attention to a waffle batter. They were using the same ingredients which they feared would spoil when it was shipped, so they created a dry mix and tried to capitalize on the frozen food market by offering a pre-cooked waffle which they called Froffle in 1953. The name was a combination of words, frozen and waffles. However, this name did not stick. Consumers preferred the Eggo label, so the brothers changed the name in 1955. In 1972, the new owners Kellogg cemented the brand with the Lego My Eggo ad campaign. If the brothers had stuck with the name Froffle, then it might not have ever caught on. These brands have cemented their place in history and they've become a part of our vernacular. But if they had stuck with their original names, they might not have done as well. Some things are better when they change. Do you know of any other wacky product names? Let us know in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching.